Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks. Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Continuing Education, Bachelor's Degree Program, Elective Course, Rural Development, BRDE-101 Rural Development, Indian Context, Block 5 and NGOs in Rural Development, Unit 5. Environment and NGOs. 5.0 Aims and Objectives. After going through this unit, you will be able to understand the concept of the environment, understand the concept of environmental degradation, analyze the impact of environmental degradation, understand the physiographic and relief features of India, analyze critically the role of NGOs in sustainable development with due emphasis on environmental protection, and list the contribution of NGOs in environmental planning. 5.1 Introduction. Environment and related issues are relevant with the survival of mankind. Therefore, any kinds of pollution or degradation in it will adversely affect humankind. Therefore, environmental protection is receiving gradual emphasis. In the setting where institutions are weak, public information, community pressure, voluntary organizations and non-governmental organizations can be a powerful spur to ever more credible and efficient environmental regulation. Environmental programs built entirely around public information have obvious limits. In a pattern seen throughout the world, initiatives from community or from the bottom up can set the stage for formal action at the national level. In this unit, efforts will be made to familiarize you with the environmental and related problems and way state and non-governmental organizations are working for improvement in it. 5.2 Environment Concept and Classification. According to a holistic ecological approach, everything which surrounds us is considered to be a part of our environment. It could be either a non-living or a living thing. The physical components of our environment are solar energy, soil, water and air. The living or biological components are called as biotic components, while non-living things are known as the abiotic components. Overall, the interaction between living and non-living parts, their effects on each other and their surrounding is known as environment. There are 4 components of our environment. These are as following. 1. Lithosphere. The Earth's crust consisting of the soil and rocks is the lithosphere. This oil is made up of inorganic and organic matter and water. The organic constituents even form only around 4% to 6% of the lithosphere, are responsible for the fertility of the soil and hence its productivity. 2. Hydrosphere. This comprises all water resources, both surface and groundwater. The world's water is found in oceans and seas, lakes and reservoirs, rivers and streams, glaciers and snowcaps in the polar regions in addition to the groundwater below the land areas. Biosphere. The biosphere is a capsule encircling the Earth's surface wherein all the living things exist. This portion extends from 10,000 meters below sea level to 6,000 meters above sea level. Life forms do not exist outside this zone. 4. Atmosphere. The atmosphere, which is a gaseous cover, protects the Earth from cosmic radiations and provides life-sustaining oxygen, the macronutrient nitrogen and carbon dioxide needed for photosynthesis. The atmosphere screens the dangerous UV radiation from the sun. The atmosphere plays a major role in maintaining the heat balance of the Earth by absorbing the emitted radiation from the Earth. In addition, the atmosphere is the medium of carriage of water from the oceans to the land in the hydrological cycle. It is the gaseous envelope surrounding the Earth and extends up to 500 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Another way of looking at the environment is to classify it into 2 components. Theses are as under. Abiotic components. The physical factors of the environment, which are non-living, have a major influence on the life of organisms. They are A. Climatic factors. It consists of temperature, rainfall, and snow, wind, light, humidity, etc. B. Edaphic factors. It is known as SOCE factors also. It consists of mineral and organic matter in soil and texture of soil and pH, potential of hydrogen. Biotic components. The life component of an ecosystem comprises plants, animals, and microorganisms, bacteria and fungi. They are classified into 3 main groups. They are Producers are mainly green plants having chlorophyll. They produce carbohydrates by the photosynthesis process. The plants convert solar energy into chemical energy using water and carbon dioxide. 2. Consumers are living things, which do not have chlorophyll, and hence they are unable to produce their own food. They rely on the producers for their food requirements. 3. Decomposers called as saprotrophs are mainly microorganisms like bacteria and fungi. They break down the organic matter into simple compounds during their metabolic process. These simple compounds are nutrients, which are absorbed by the producers, thus completing a cyclic exchange matter between the biotic and abiotic components of the ecosystem. 5.3 Environment and Natural Resource Management. Poverty reduction and economic growth, two critical components of rural development, can be sustained only if natural resources are managed on a sustainable basis. The rural poor depends on natural resources for subsistence and livelihoods. Conservation and regeneration of ecosystems and the natural resource base can stimulate rural economies, create jobs and help maintain critical ecosystem services and strengthen the climate resilience of the rural poor, the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change and natural resources degradation. You are aware that the environmental degradation often leads to loss of fertile soils, desertification, unsustainable forest management, reduction of freshwater availability and an extreme biodiversity loss rate that does not leave enough time to the environment for recovery and regeneration. Environmental pollution, degradation of natural resources, natural disasters and inadequate environmental services, such as improved water supply and sanitation, impose costs to society in the form of ill health, lost income, and increased poverty and vulnerability. Managing natural resources sustainably is important because of th_dependency of the poor, particularly the majority of the poor who depend on agriculture, on natural resource stocks, the vulnerability of the poor to environmental shocks, and long-term environmental impact. The significant environmental pressures facing developing countries have their roots in poverty and lack of rural development and the absence of public infrastructure and amenities in these countries. Deforestation, to take just one example, is intensified both by the desperate need of the poor for fuel and their need for agricultural land. According to World Bank estimates, the annual cost of environmental degradation in India amounts to about 3.75 trillion rupees, $80 billion, equivalent to 5.7% of GDP. Among the highest to blame was pollution, mainly outdoor pollution arising from particulate matter, PM10, that was largely due to the burning of fossil fuels along with the losses due to the lack of access to clean water supply, sanitation and hygiene. India ranked 126th overall in the air pollution effects on human health in the new survey of 132 countries whose environments was surveyed. Also, as per the WHO survey that was conducted across the G20 economies, out of the 20 most polluted cities of the world, 13 are in India. 5.3.1 Environmental issues. There are many environmental issues in India: air pollution, water pollution, garbage, and pollution. These are all challenges to the natural environment in India. Major environmental issues are forest and agricultural degradation of land, resource depletion, water, mineral, forest, sand, rocks etc., environmental degradation, public health, loss of biodiversity, loss of resilience in ecosystems, livelihood security for the poor. The objectives of environmental NGOs intervention in relation to rural development to improve the sustainable use of natural resources include reducing land degradation, improving water management, promoting sustainable production of forest products while protecting the environment, supporting sustainable fisheries resource management, incorporating global warming into rural development planning, improving natural resource conservation, increasing efficiency of resource use, reducing negative environmental impacts, strengthening climate resilience of communities, and contributing to climate change mitigation.
You are listening to this audiobook on Audio Learn IGNOU 5.4 Physiography and Belief. India has become self-sufficient in agricultural production and is now the 10th most industrialized country in the world. India's population as on 1st of March, 2001, was 1,028,532.1 million males and 496.4 million females. India accounts for 2.4% of the world's surface area of 135.79 million square kilometer, and it supports and sustains 16.7% of the world population. It covers an area of 32,87,263 square kilometers, extending from the snow-W covered Himalayas in the north to the tropical rainforests of the south. India has a land frontier of about 15,200 kilometers. The total length of the coastline, including the mainland, Lakshadweep Islands, and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, is 7,517 kilometers. The mainland comprises of 4 regions, namely, the Great Mountain Zone, the Indo-Gangetic Plains, the Desert Region, and the Southern Peninsula. Coastal areas. India's coast is 7,517 kilometers, 4,671 miles, long. Of this distance, 5,423 kilometers, 3,370 miles, belongs to peninsular India, and 2,094 kilometers, 1,301 miles, to Andaman, Nicobar, and Lakshadweep Islands. The main one and coast consists of the following: 43% sandy beaches, 11% rocky coast including cliffs, and 46% mudflats or marshy coast. Rivers of India. The rivers of India can be classified into 4 groups, viz. the Himalayan rivers, the Deccan rivers, the coastal rivers, and rivers of the N1 and drainage basin. Climate. The climate of India may be broadly described as tropical monsoonal type. There are 4 seasons. 1. Winter, January to February. 2. Hot weather summer, March to May. 3. Rainy southwestern monsoon, June to September, and 4. Post-monsoon, also known as northeast monsoon in the southern peninsula, October to December. 5.5 Land. India is the 7th largest country in the world. Growing population and urbanization is leading to declining in its forests and agricultural lands. F the total geographical area of 328.73 hectare 146.82 hectare land is degraded land. The major causes of land degradation are water and wind erosion and other complex problems like alkalinity/salinity and soil acidity due to waterlogging. Land degradation. The underlying causes of land degradation are unstable use and inappropriate land management practices, unsustainable fuel wood and fodder extraction, shifting cultivation, encroachment into forest lands, forest fires and overgrazing. Agricultural practices like extension of cultivation to lands of low potential or high natural hazards, non-adoption of adequate soil conservation measures, improper crop rotation, indiscriminate use of agrochemicals such as fertilizers and pesticides, improper planning and management of irrigation systems and extraction of groundwater in excess of the recharge capacity also leads to land and ecosystem degradation. Agricultural practices. A look at the land use for agricultural purposes will help us to understand the problem of land degradation. Out of India's total geographical area, 328.7 million hectares, 141.89 million hectares is the net sown area, while 192.80 million hectares is the gross cropped area. The net irrigated area is 60.20 million hectares and the cropping intensity is 135.90%. Over the past 50 years, while India's total population increased by about 3 times, the total area of land under cultivation increased by only 20.2%, from 118.75 ma. in 1951 to 141.89 ma. in 2005-06. Most of this expansion has taken place by encroaching on forest and grazing land. Agricultural expansion, development and intensification have led to increased soil erosion, land salination and loss of nutrients. Agricultural waste residue burning. Burning of wheat and rice straw and other agricultural residue contributed to loss of soil fertility and is a source of air pollution and smog. This straw is rich in nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, which when recycled back into the soil by mulching, increases soil fertility. Straw burning raises the temperature of the soil in the top 3 inches to such a high degree that the carbon-nitrogen equilibrium in soil changes rapidly. Moreover, fire in the field kills friendly fauna and bacteria. Soil erosion. Soil is a unique non-renewable natural resource. It is estimated that 1/6 of the world's soil has already been degraded by water and wind erosion. Consequently, the soil erosion and sedimentation in the reservoirs are causing environmental problems with disastrous economic implications. While soil erosion in hilly areas causes landslides and floods. Deforestation. Overgrazing. Traditional agricultural practices, mining and development projects in forested areas have resulted in exposing the green cover to severe soil erosion. 5.5.1 Change in forest cover. Forests are part of an ecosystem that supports and nurtures life, economies and societies. Forests provide a wide range of services which include prevention of soil erosion, floods, landslides, maintenance of soil fertility, and fixing carbon from the atmosphere. The total forest cover of the country, as per the 2005 assessment, is 6,77,088 square kilometers, which constitutes 20.60% of the geographic area of the country. The total tree cover of the country has been estimated as 91,663 square kilometers, or about 2.79% of the country's geographical area. Major factors which have contributed in the decline of forest cover are drivers and pressures affecting forest ecosystems. Underlying causes of forest depletion and degradation are population pressure, poverty and weak institutional framework. Requirements of forest resources like fuel, wood, fodder, timber, lumber, paper, leads to overexploitation of the forest resources, as compared to its incremental and regenerative capacities, which escalates the forest depletion and degradation process. Mining. India is rich in a variety of natural resources. Mining activity often leads to environmental problems like land degradation, particularly in open-cast mining, and land subsidence in underground mining. Open-cast mining in areas with forest cover causes deforestation. Mining complexes, as estimated recently, occupy around 0.06% of the total land area of the country. 5.5.2 Floods. India is witnessing an increasing frequency of floods, largely due to deforestation in the catchment areas, destruction of SOCE vegetation, change in land use, increased urbanization and other developmental activities. The increased sedimentation and reduced capacity of drainage systems cause streams and rivers overflow their banks, flooding the downstream areas, causing a considerable damage to the productive land system. The problem of waterlogging in India is more common in canal command areas, surface irrigation, because irrigation facilities are often introduced without adequate provision for drainage. 5.5.3 Desertification. In India, 228.3 ma of the geographical area comprises arid, 50.8 hectare, semi-arid, 123.4 hectare, and dry subhumid regions, 54.1 hectare. About 92% area in arid Rajasthan is affected by desertification, 30% slightly, 41% moderately and 21% severely. In neighboring Gujarat, about 93% area is affected by desertification. State of Forest Report, 2005. 5.5.4 Pollution. Soil pollution from heavy metals due to improper disposal of industrial effluents, along with the excessive use of pesticides and mismanagement of domestic and municipal wastes, is becoming a major concern. Soil texture, infiltration and permeability characteristics are affected adversely to a considerable extent due to excessive grazing, fire and mismanagement of land under cultivation. Check your progress. 1. What are major components of environment? 2. Highlight the objectives of environmental NGOs. 5.6 Air. In India, air pollution is proving to be an issue of concern. Main sources of air pollution are emissions from vehicular, industrial and domestic activities. According to reports, India's urban air quality ranks amongst the world's worst. Of the 3 million premature deaths in the world that occur each year due to outdoor and indoor air pollution, the highest numbers are assessed to occur in India. The growing air pollution menace is deadly for the urban poor in India, 50 to 60% of who live in slums. Vehicular emissions containing pollutants such as sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, lead, ozone, benzene, and hydrocarbons, GOEL 2005, are major air pollutants in urban areas. The worst thing about vehicular pollution is that it cannot be avoided as the vehicular emissions are emitted at near ground level. Total vehicle population of India is more than 85 million, about 1% share of the world. Along with it, major air polluting factors in India are
industrial sector growth. The development of a diversified industrial structure, based on a combination of large and small-scale industries, along with growing population has contributed to the growing incidence of air pollution. Airborne emissions emitted from various industries are a cause of major concern. Agricultural waste burning. It also causes air pollution due to emission of large amounts of suspended particulate matter, besides gases, leading to various health hazards like respiratory, skin and eye diseases. Intensive agriculture is also a contributor to greenhouse gases, GHG, like carbon dioxide, methane and nitrous oxide, causing climate change. Domestic sector, indoor air pollution. A considerable amount of air pollution results from burning of fossil fuels. The household sector is the second largest consumer of energy in India after the industrial sector. National Family Health Survey 3, NFHS 3, found that 71% of India's households use solid fuels for cooking and that 91% of rural households also do the same. 5.7 Water. Rise in demand and development pressures are changing the scenario of water availability in India. Groundwater reserves are becoming depleted and surface water sources are becoming polluted. Biodiversity in the country's wetlands and coastal mangroves is fast declining. Current socio-economic activities and economic incentives are encouraging the unsustainable consumption of water. Major sources of consumable water are as following. Surface water. India is blessed with many rivers. 12 major river systems drain the subcontinent along with a number of smaller rivers and streams and form a total catchment area of approximately 252.8 hectare of the major rivers. The Ganga-Brahmaputra-Meghna system is the biggest, with a combined catchment area of about 110 hectare, which is more than 43% of the catchment area of all the major rivers in the country. Other major rivers with a catchment area of more than 10 ma are Indus, 32.1 hectare, Godavari, 31.3 hectares, Krishna, 25.9 hectare, and Mahanadi, 14.2 hectare. Groundwater. Groundwater represents one of the most important water sources in India. The estimated replenishable groundwater potential of the country 431.3 per year. Excluding the water reserved for drinking, industrial and other purposes, other than irrigation, which is about 16% of the total potential. The potential available for irrigation is 360.3 per year. The figure for net draft of groundwater considering the present utilization indicates that a substantial portion of the total potential, about 68%, still remains untapped. You are listening to this audiobook on Audio Learn IGNOU 5.7.1 Water Demand. Water shortage is one of the leading factors limiting development in India. The agricultural sector consumes highest proportion, while industrial demands are increasing. Domestic needs consumes only a small portion of the annual water withdrawals as access to adequate water and sanitation supplies remains low throughout the country. Greater access and an improvement in the socio-economic situation is likely to result in a higher demand for water in the coming years. In rural India, agriculture demand. Agriculture receives the greatest share of the annual water allocation. According to the World Resources Institute, 2000, 92% of India's utilizable water is consumed for irrigation. The necessity of irrigation in agricultural peak production is greater due to the unpredictable nature of the monsoon. On the other end, flood conditions could prove to be equally devastating for the agricultural sector and require careful planning in terms of drainage and construction of flood control structures. Industrial demand. Water consumption for this sector has consequently risen and will continue growing at a rate of 4.2% per year, World Bank, 1999. According to the World Bank, demand of water for industrial, energy production and other uses will rise from 67 billion cubic meter to 228 billion cubic meter by 2025. Hydroelectric generation already accounts for a large percentage of water demand. The potential in India has been estimated to be 84,000 megawatts, of which only 22,000 megawatts is currently being harnessed. More, 2001. Domestic demand. Demand from the domestic sector accounts for only 5% of the annual freshwater withdrawals in India, World Resources Institute, 2000. Domestic water use will increase as the population continues to grow and access to water is improved. According to the World Bank estimates, the demand over the next 20 years will double from 25 billion meter cube to 52 billion meter cube. Over 80% of the rural domestic water comes from groundwater sources since it is more reliable in terms of water quantity and quality. Water pollution is a serious problem in India as almost 70% of its surface water resources and a growing percentage of its groundwater reserves are contaminated by biological, toxic, organic and inorganic pollutants. More 2000. In 1995, the Central Pollution Control Board identified severely polluted stretches on 18 major rivers in India, World Bank, 1999. The majority of these stretches were found in and around large urban areas. Groundwater contamination is a major problem which has affected as many as 19 states, including Delhi. The geogenic contaminants, including salinity, iron, fluoride and arsenic have affected groundwater in over 200 districts spread across 19 states. Studies have shown that long-term intake of fluoride can cause tooth decay and crippled bones. Arsenic can cause skin cancer and skin pigmentation. The rapid increase in agrochemical use in the past 5 decades has contributed significantly to the pollution of both surface and groundwater resources. World Bank, 1999. Water pollution. Major sources of water pollution are industries. Although the industrial sector only accounts for 3% of the annual water withdrawals in India, its contribution to water pollution, particularly in urban areas, is considerable. Wastewater generation from this sector has been estimated to be 55,000 million meter cube per day, of which 68.5 million cubic meter are dumped directly into local rivers and streams without prior treatment. More, 2000. Wastewater from industrial activities is often contaminated with highly toxic organic and inorganic substances, some of which are persistent pollutants and remain in the environment for many years. For instance, over 50% of the urban organic load in some cities originates from industrial effluents. Further, heavy metal contamination from thermal power, tannery and mining activities has occurred in several locations. World Bank, 1999. Domestic usage. All of India's 14 major river systems are heavily polluted, mostly from the 50 million cubic meters of untreated sewage discharged into them each year. Approx 1999. The domestic sector is responsible for the majority of wastewater generation in India. Combined, The 22 largest cities in the country produce over 7,267 million liters of domestic wastewater per day. Inadequate treatment of human and animal wastes also contributes to high incidence of water-related diseases in the country. Therefore, water contaminated by human waste is often discharged directly into watercourses or seeps into the groundwater table from faulty septic tanks or pits. The level of fecal coliform bacteria in most rivers often exceeds WHO standards. Ru-1D is responsible for causing a number of gastrointestinal ailments among the population. Improper disposal of solid waste also leads to surface and groundwater pollution. Runoff from garbage dumps and city streets carries litter, deposed particulate matter and chemicals to nearby streams and canals. Leaching from landfills and garbage pits transports toxic substances and heavy metals to the water table. Annual production of solid waste in India has been estimated to be 2,000 million tons, more, 2,000. This figure will undoubtedly continue to increase with the growing population and the higher consumption of disposable goods resulting from improvement in the socio-economic conditions of the rural and urban residents. Has led to contamination of groundwater in many parts of the country. 5.8 Biodiversity. India, a megadiverse country with only 2.4% of the land area, accounts for 7 to 8% of the recorded species of the world, including over 45,500 species of plants and 91,000 species of anyone else. India is situated at the tri-junction of the Afrotropical, the Indo-Malayan and the Paleo-Arctic realms, which display significant biodiversity. Being one of the 17 identified megadiverse countries, it is home to 8.58% of mammalians, 13.66% of avian, 7.91% of reptilians, 4.66% of amphibians, 11.72% of fish, and 11.80% of plant species documented so far. India's forest cover ranges from the tropical rainforest of the Andaman Islands, Western Ghats, and northeastern India to the coniferous forest of the Himalayas. Between these extremes lie the sal-dominated moist deciduous forest of eastern India, the teak-dominated dry deciduous forest of central and southern India, and the babul-dominated thorn forest of central Deccan and western Gangetic plains. India has two biodiversity, namely 1. The eastern Himalayas, 2. The western Ghats hotspots. And it is composed of diverse ecological habitats. 1. Forests, 2. Grasslands, 3. Wetlands, 4. Coastal and marine ecosystems, 5. Desert ecosystems. 5.8.1 Threats to biodiversity. The rural population that accounts for nearly 74% of India's population is substantially dependent on biodiversity resources for fodder, fuel wood, timber and minor forest produce. With demographic changes, the land-to-man ratio and forest-to-man ratio has rapidly declined. The creation of valley-bottom reservoirs in wilderness areas has brought on the destruction of some of the finest forests and biodiversity-rich unique ecosystems. Deforestation due to hydropower and mining projects are the greatest threats to biodiversity in India. Human activities see, directly and indirectly, responsible for current high rates of biodiversity loss. Some of the major issues are habitat loss, fragmentation and degradation result due to agricultural activities, extraction, including mining, fishing, logging and harvesting, and development, human settlements, industry and associated infrastructure, changes in forest composition and quality, and the resultant habitat type lead to a decline in primary food species for wildlife. Poaching and hunting. Invasive species. Overexploitation of wild bioresources. Pollution of atmosphere, water and soil. Global climate change. Check your progress too. 1. Discuss factors leading to land degradation in India. 2. What are the major factors responsible for air pollution? 5.9 Roles and activities of NGOs. NGOs are major players in both development and conservation activities. At the micro level, community level, they provide assistance in the acquisition of basic needs and amenities. 2. In identifying issues, raising awareness, and providing information to grassroots communities. 3. In articulating the community's problems and needs and bringing these to the attention of those who can affect change. 4. In defending both the environmental and developmental rights of communities and building the capacity of communities to manage their natural resources, and in dealing with sustainable development concerns. NGOs that work at the macro level, national level, focus mainly on policy work, playing a vital role in the identification of the weaknesses and gaps in current policy or legal frameworks, in information gathering and educating the public, private sector and government, and, in certain cases, in activist lobbying and protest movements. Some of the issues on which the NGOs draw their attention and efforts are to integrate local knowledge and people to harness to inform natural resource management processes, assess the environmental impact and scope for sustainability of natural resource-based activities on which the rural poor depend. How can the interests of the rural poor be integrated into international negotiations relating to the management of natural resources? What impacts do increasing economic activities have on the environment and the quality and quantity of natural resources? Does the transformation of economic activities and the increasing integration in global processes reduce conflicts over access to resources or rather aggravate them? To assess the environmental impacts of small producers being increasingly integrated into global economic processes, how could negative environmental impacts be mitigated? What support systems are necessary to help small-scale producers to switch from conventional to more environmental-friendly production methods? Energy. Efficient utilization of energy. Environment sustainable development. Sustainable use of natural resources. Large-scale adoption of renewable energy technologies, and reduction of all forms of wastes. 5.9.1 Role of NGOs in environment protection. The fundamental objective of NGOs is to act as catalysts in bringing about local and national initiatives for community participation in an overall improvement in quality of life. They also help the government to obtain relevant information for promoting and facilitate the implementation of major environmental programs. The NGOs interact with governments and internal intergovernmental organizations in shaping environmental policies, facilitating the participation of various categories of stakeholders in the discussion on environmental issues, creating awareness among the public on current environmental issues and solutions, conducting a participatory rural appraisal, protecting the natural resources and entrusting the equitable use of resources, data generation on natural resources, analysis and monitoring of environmental quality, transferring information through newsletters, brochures, articles, audiovisuals, etc., organizing seminars, lectures and group discussions for promotion of environmental awareness, helping the village's administrative officials in preparation, application and execution of projects on environmental protection. Encourage and empower primary users of natural resources to sustainably manage the resources that they depend on using participatory approaches, and develop long-term strategies to adopt livelihoods of their choice. Promote energy efficiency and use of renewable energy for rural development and for a cleaner environment. Understand and address the challenges of global climate change. Reach out to involve people, communities and institutions to strengthen efforts to develop and implement sustainable solutions. Promotes public understanding of the impact of climate change. It works to help mitigate negative impacts. It also shapes human responses to the environment. Mission is to engage people to promote the sustainable environment. Action for understanding the sustainable environment. To access technical or managerial resources. To gain legitimacy or recognition. To gain institutional support. To adapt a program to their area. To acquire appropriate solutions to development problems. To enhance people's participation in government programs. To promote greater accountability and transparency. To promote reforms in public services systems. India has a number of NGOs that work in the field of environmental conservation and ecology. Here is a comprehensive list. 1. Assam Science Society. They impart environmental education and training through camps for teachers and students and conduct surveys on environment. 2. Bombay Natural History Society. Aims to disseminate knowledge of flora and fauna by means of lectures, field trips, literature and expeditions, and to study wildlife-related problems and recommend management plans to conserve wild wildlife and its habitat. 3. Center for Environmental Education, CE. They mainly aim to create environmental awareness in the communities, conduct widespread environmental education and training programmers through a very vast network. 4. Center for Science and Environment, CSE. Involved in research, investigative and educational work in the field of pollution, forest, wildlife, land and water use. 5. CPR Environmental Education Center, CP Ramaswamy Foundation promotes environmental awareness, to produce and disseminate basic educational and reference material on environment and to take up environmental projects. It works in the field of environment education. 6. Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad. To preserve the environment, to provide alternative models for development and to popularize science among the people. They have worked in the field of eco-development, creating awareness about water and energy conservation and encouraging the use of non-conventional energy sources such as smokeless gas, etc. 7. Kalpavriksha. It is a citizens' action group set up to inculcate understanding and concern on environmental issues, especially among the youth. It also aims to conduct research in environmental problems, to campaign on environmental issues and to evolve a holistic environmental perspective. It imparts environmental education in schools and colleges by forming a network of nature clubs, conducting bird watching expeditions and nature trails, and has developed workbooks for the school level. 8. Narmada Bachao and Alo, set up in 1986 under the leadership of Medha Patkar. It aims mainly to educate those directly affected by large development projects, such as Tribal, on the social and environmental impact of such projects. To protest against the construction of dams in the Narmada Valley in general, struggling towards a right to information and new environmentally sustainable water policy. To help the tribal get a substantial share of the government's development schemes/services and to enable them to undertake development activities themselves. They mainly educate, mobilize and organize residents of the Narmada Valley on human rights and justice, alternative development policies, environmental issues related to big dams in general and the Narmada project in particular. They undertake surveys of the affected villages, protest against land and forest issues and government interference in this regard. They are fighting against displacement and disregard of the rights of the people. Publication. They come out with a bi-monthly publication, the Narmada Samachar. 9. Worldwide Fund for Nature. Its main aim is the promotion of conservation of nature and environmental protection as the basis for sustainable equitable development. 10. Foundation for Revitalization of Local Health Traditions, FRLHT. FRLHT is a pioneering knowledge institute with a vision to revitalize the Indian medical heritage. Its mission is to demonstrate contemporary relevance of Indian medical heritage by designing and implementing innovative program on a size and scale that will have a societal impact. The three thrust areas of FRLHT's work are: conservation of natural resources used by Indian systems of medicine, demonstrate the contemporary relevance of traditional knowledge, revitalizations of social processes for transmission of heritage. 5.10 Let us sum up. India with diverse ecological features is facing threat of environmental pollution, which is affecting a large section of the rural population by way of reduced agricultural yield, ill health, resource degradation and climate change. Apart from the government and other agencies, the NGOs play an important role in creating awareness about environmental issues, advocating for the poor and marginalized sections of the society affected by the environmental degradation and displaced by the developmental projects. Thank you. We will see you in the next video.